the technology changes so fast that if you're not close to what's going on the ground level, you're kind of going to miss these big kind of generational opportunities. Do you actually think that the users on Polymarket understand which blockchain it's on? And I remember having this conversation with Shane. Like, it's like, hey, why is it on Polygon? He's a very practical minded CEO and leader, and I think very much obsessed with what does the end customer see.
Basically, I congratulated him. He said, "Thank you. Today was a day to celebrate and to smell the roses. Tomorrow, it's back to war." Right. And that has always been his mindset, is every day he wakes up going to war to win this market and to build the business that he thinks is going to just be, generational.
This episode is brought to you by Blockdaemon. You'll hear more about them later in today's episode. The Digital Asset Summit, our premier institutional conference, is right around the corner. In London from the 13th to the 15th, we'll be at the Old Billingsgate with some of the largest banks, funds, and allocators as they explore how to gain exposure to crypto. We'll have a ton of great speakers, including Dan Moorhead, Joe Lubin, Guy Young, and a bunch of amazing side events, so you can meet some of the largest names in the industry. So follow the link in the show notes to find out more and use code EMPIRE200 for £200 off your ticket. Nothing said on Empire is a recommendation to buy or sell any investments or products. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the views expressed by anyone on the show are solely their opinions, not financial advice or necessarily the views of Blockworks. Our hosts, guests, and the Blockworks team may hold positions in the companies, funds, or projects discussed. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Empire. We got the Roundup. We got Rob back in action. Rob,
I almost have forgotten that Rob was part of the crew.
Honestly, Rob,
are you kidding?
When was the last time you joined us?
Can I tell you something? I was 2 weeks ago. In that 2 weeks, I've had like 4 people come up to me and be like, "You've really transformed Empire. Like, you should keep doing what you're doing."
I'll tell you who it was.
So,
let me tell you something.
Your cousin, your wife.
No. It was like literally in Singapore at this like side event. A guy who's like a sales guy at like one of the custodians came up to me and he was like, "I just want to tell you something." He's like, "You got to keep doing what you're doing. Like, you've transformed that podcast. That's now every week." And then I heard
he asked you to custody all the Dragonfly assets for
him. And then I heard it from another VC yesterday. So, I'm just telling you, like, we're a team, but it's been brought to another level. Like, it's 1 + 1 + 1 = 5. So,
right, well, should we have a prediction market or like a real time barometer of like sentiment of Empire Pod? Like, where's that, Yana? We got to do the TB, the tickers in the bottom. We got to do sentiment live stream.
Coming, sir. Yeah, we have nice new design for Empire coming out. We got the tickers, we got all that stuff.
Listen, I got to get on the graphic though. Okay, like right now I'm tagged on the Twitter, but the graphic is
just added you to the bio.
Rob's that kind of guy that you extend a hand, he chops off your arm.
Notice Rob's in the middle of this picture right now too. We're just on the side of Rob.
Rob, baby steps. It's like vesting, It's like you gotta work your way up to it. Yeah. It took me, for what it's worth, listen, man, I'm just gonna say, it took me 3.5 years to get a hoodie. 3.5 years to get a hoodie.
Well, that's because no one got a hoodie. Mike and I were so cheap with merch. We were like, no one gets merch. We don't. So you stupid use of money. I now actually think it's a good use of money, but yeah.
Santi, I don't know. You said it's like investing, and I think you understand now how I invest, and I don't invest with any patience whatsoever.
No, we got that from the get-go, man. There is you've been busy, sir. I mean, look, there's a lot to talk about, guys. Going back to business.
Let's start with Polymarket. Let's start with Polymarket. So I think you two can both do some victory laps here. Santi, obviously you were Parify when you guys did Polymarket very, very early. I think Ben and Parify are maybe the largest shareholder, from first or second largest shareholder.
I think they're number 2
behind Founders Fund.
Behind Founders Fund. Well, and now ICE. So they're number 3 behind ICE and Founders Fund.
Yeah. So the big news is they raised $2 billion from ICE. ICE owns NYSE and a lot of other capital markets businesses, but most well known for owning the New York Stock Exchange. And they invested $2 billion, as well as they have a data distribution deal or markets distribution deal as well with the New York Stock Exchange and ICE at I think it was $9 billion valuation. Shane becomes the I think the headline was the youngest self-made millionaire in the billionaire in the world. People proceeded to share a lot of cringy internal screenshots, which I can rant about if we want. But anyways, hats off to Polymarket. Nice work to you too. But would love to hear maybe more color on this deal. Polymarket also announced, Shane also announced 2 other deals that had happened that never really got announced. One was, I think, led by Founders Fund. One was led by Blockchain Cap. I might be getting that wrong. But yeah, maybe you guys could give us a little bit more color on just like, the success story here.
Yeah, I mean, Santi's been, he's been in it longer, so he should do more of the conversation about the early days. We so that round that happened in 2023, late 2023, early 24, we did alongside Founders Fund. They priced it. We were the largest investor in that round. And then you mentioned the next 2 rounds. The next round was led by Blockchain Cap right before the election, which we also participated in. And then there was another Founders Fund led round out of their growth fund earlier this year, at a $1.2 billion valuation that we also participated in. So we've been backers of Shane for, call it, coming up on 2 years. We've known him for a long time. We've been, I think, believers in him as an entrepreneur since the beginning. He's got such, just incredible ambition, maniacal focus. Even during the worst of the bear markets, 22 and 23, he just was always convinced that he was going to create a generational company, which will create the markets for everything. He, I think, is obsessive in a way very, very few entrepreneurs are. There's a lot of entrepreneurs. I mean, there's 2 entrepreneurs on this podcast with me, and the level of obsession that he has is just a level that I think very few people are able to reach. And that was what it was.
Can you go deeper on what that actually looks like? Because I think a lot of founders maybe are listening, being like, "I'm obsessed. I work hard, and I've spent a little bit of time with Shane, and I know what you're saying, but only because I've spent some time with him." Can you maybe go deeper on that?
Yeah, I think with Shane, he had a vision very early on, and he was not the first prediction market to get launched. And Santi could probably talk a lot about this too, because he was there in the beginning, but he was not the first prediction market to get launched. There was Augur, which obviously Joey Krug was one of the founders of, and is at Founders Fund now, led that round. There was, Kalshi was launched actually before Polymarket, but he had this vision that when he's a young guy, that he was going to create a market for everything. That was the vision. That was the thing he said from the earliest of days. And then he put it in his tweet yesterday, right? Every time I have talked to him since then, his belief was that prediction markets and event contracts created better information flow. They needed to exist to coalesce information and incentives. And they needed there to be a market for everything, so you could have direct access in a way to express views, right? And that vision of his started, I think, in the late 20 teens. And every single time you would talk to him after that, that was what he was building. There was never, hey, listen, I don't necessarily have PMF yet, or hey, this market hasn't done well, maybe I'll do something else. There was never, I've had this. He did he kind of had this thing with the CFTC in which they settled, and he didn't waver at that point. FTX went down. He almost ran out of money. He just paid himself less, kept working on it, right? There was never a time where I think he had anything on his mind other than, I am going to build this business. And no matter what people are saying to me, no matter how bearish people are, no matter how little money I have, no matter how the market is perceiving what I am doing, I know that this is going to be a generational company, and I am going to build it, and people will understand eventually. And yesterday or 2 days ago was kind of the culmination of that. But and I wrote in a tweet that I put, I also think it's the beginning of now the rest of the world realizing what he said, right? And now the rest of the world coming into understanding that this needs to exist, right? And him and I exchanged a few texts on Tuesday, and to his credit, and I love this about him every time I talk to him, he said, basically I congratulated him. He said, thank you. Today was a day to celebrate and to smell the roses. Tomorrow it's back to war, right? And that has always been his mindset, is every day he wakes up going to war to win this market and to build the business that he thinks is going to just be, generational. And so that's what I loved about him.
Man, as has been tradition now, everyone's tweeting about like screenshots about conversations with Shane. I'm going back down memory lane.
Are you pulling up some old emails here?
Dude, no, not emails. March 2021. We're closing the round. It was, I think, the first round at like 15 million or so.
15 million.
I think so. We're like sub 20. We participated, and it's testament of what Rob's saying. I go back, and we were back in the early days. Shane and I were going back and forth.
But what's that, a 600x? So it's 9 billion.
We're I will say Shane is one of those founders that, and I tweeted about this the other day, which is what was different, because you had Augur. Funny enough, Joey started Augur, didn't work. Now as a founders fund, did the round, one of later rounds on Polymarket. And look, there's a couple of things of like why this actually worked. And look, a lot of it is easy to like in hindsight try to like diagnose and like path dependency and whatnot. But it really starts with the founder. I mean, Shane was early in Ethereum. He was like a crypto, a cypherpunk, was at NYU and kind of had started Union, didn't work out well. And then was like, hey, I want to do prediction markets. It's a future of media. I'm like obsessed with this idea. And we share with that. Like, I was like, absolutely. Like, Parify, we had been investors in Augur. It didn't work. And so it's just a really good example of it pays to revisit the thesis, which is a lot of times people make an investment, doesn't work, and say totally discredits the category. And crypto, how many times have we been in that scenario where like DeFi didn't work and like, so, okay, you discredit that, or perps on chain didn't work. And then you have hyperliquid. So again, like the technology changes so fast that if you're not close to what's going on the ground level, you're kind of going to miss these big kind of generational opportunities. I think Polymarket prediction markets are still very, very early. This idea of putting markets on everything is just nascent, right? But yeah, it's been a long grind in the making. Shane is just super adamant about this idea that prediction markets are going to be huge, and he's stuck with it. I guess like it's important to underscore timing is important. The elections were super important, right? I would say like there were key pivotal moments in the evolution of Polymarket that you had, like the first Trump election where it was contested and it was super heated and the attention just went to Polymarket because it was like a market and people were pointing to that. And
then you also have the downfall of mainstream media and
correct. And Trump got in deplatformed. And then you had, geopolitical tension and people were looking at like, events in the Middle East. And like, I remember it is, in my estimation, like the most breakthrough kind of consumer application that crypto has had. And I tweeted about this the other day, which is maybe something that we can talk about here or not. It's this idea of like, do you actually think that the users on Polymarket understand which blockchain it's on? I would tell you like, we all know where it is, but do you like it's on Polygon? And I remember having this conversation with Shane, like, it's like, hey, why is it on Polygon? And he's a very practical minded CEO and leader. And I think very much obsessed with what does the end customer see? And then of course the crypto native crowd jumps in and says, well, what happens if Polygon's down? That's going to disrupt the service and all this. It's like, and it's fair, it's true. But it's one of those, it's just a good example of do one thing really well and just continue to double down on that. And it's not to say Polymarket's perfect, by the way. Like there's a tail into markets that, source and liquidity for markets had been an issue, and the Oracle dispute resolution had been an issue with like UMA, and there was contentious stuff about how to do that. And but yeah, no, it's hats off to him, Shane. We'd love to have you on the pod now that you've announced everything. And I know he was sort of in a quiet period to get licensed in the US and whatnot through this acquisition, but we'll love to have him on. I think it would be a great conversation.
He told me his next media appearance in the US is going to be 60 minutes, I think. So
60 minutes.
Well, I don't know if he's actually doing that, or if that was
rather like do 60 minutes than Empire. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. That's insane. That's great. Come on, Shane. Across 30 plus networks and 180 endpoints, Blockdaemon EarnStack unites staking and DeFi into a single institutional toolkit for crypto rewards. With multi-layered security, full asset control, and 24/7 support, Blockdaemon EarnStack is built for scale and regulatory clarity. Non-custodial staking and seamless DeFi access, all in one stack. Direct access to DeFi with no intermediate smart contract or vaults. To book a demo, make sure to click the link in the show notes or head over to Blockdaemon EarnStack to find out more. Thanks to Blockdaemon for making today's episode possible. The machine economy is here. Devices are monetizing data for their users all over the world. Tokenized robots are generating revenue for token holders. The first machine economy free zone is live in the Emirates, and it's all happening on Peaq, the machine economy computer. Head to peaq.xyz, that's peaq.xyz, to find out how you can benefit from the age of automation, or click the link in the show notes to find out more. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply. I have a question for you guys. So Shane, if you spend time with him, people will laugh at me for saying this, but like he has aura, and he has like a way of carrying himself. And actually, I've talked to ex Polymarket people who helped build Polymarket with him, and I was like, what's Shane's like deal? Like, is he a really good engineer? They're like, oh no, not at all. They're like, is he like an amazing product designer? They're like, he does product design, but he's not like world class at it. And they're like, I was like, what's the deal? He's like, he just drives the company forward.
Oh yeah.
And he's got kind of like a vibe of doing it that makes other people want to be around him. And I remember being at like the all-in dinner with Chamath and Kalkanis and all these guys in Miami, and Shane walks into the room, and it was like Trump walked into the room. I mean, like everyone basically just like, there's all these famous people in the room. Everyone goes towards him. So I guess my question to you guys, like Rob and Santi, as you coach other founders, and now Santi, you're in the founder seat, and like Rob, you look at a lot of founders, like what is the lesson to be learned there?
Listen, I think in my mind, what Shane does is not something that can be learned, right? And so there's all these things that you can learn as a founder around, business development and, kind of convincing people to do the things that you want and engaging with them where they're at. And those are not the things that like Shane does really well, and the reason he gets people to do what, is good for Polymarket or good for him. What Shane has is he just has, to your point, an ability to share his vision and get other people to buy into his vision, right? One of the most important things, and I'm sure both of you guys know this, that you can do as a founder is you can hire top talent. You can get investors and partners to share your vision, to want to be a part of whatever you're building. And it is just, again, I think his maniacal focus and his belief and unwavering, just like there is no time at which you would talk to him and you would think he ever doubted himself, right? And like I'm sure internally, I guess I'm not sure, but my guess is internally at some point over the last 5 years, 6 years, he doubted whether or not this was the right path forward. And never at any point did I talk to him that it did not seem like he actually believed he was going to build a generational company, and that it was not just that he was going to build it, but this was it. And it was always going to be this. And so I don't know if you can learn that, right? But what I do think that, maybe you can take away from it is that it is important to be the evangelist for your company. It is important to be a storyteller. It is important to get the right people around the table, to hire the right people. That is probably the number one thing that you see all of the best entrepreneurs and CEOs do. They tell the story in a way that gets everybody else excited and brings everyone else to the table.
Yeah. Invert. Always invert. Yeah, I agree with that, Rob. I agree. Santi, I'll help you tell your story. What about on the fundraising side? Because there's a lot of companies that are doing really well right now, and a lot of people fundraising and a lot of people raising a lot of money. To go raise $2 billion is not your typical throw together a deck, put the data room, and like go talk to some VCs type of thing. How does something like that come together?
It's almost so. Just I want to make one point of clarification: is they raised $1 billion in primary, and then there was a $1 billion tender. And
okay.
so it's a billion that's injected into the company.
Got it.
But regardless, it's $2 billion from ICE. So your point still stands. Those deals are almost a little bit different typically, and I don't have like full transparency into how this happened with Shane and Polymarket. He was obviously wanted to keep a lot of it close to the vest as it was coming together, didn't want it to leak, et cetera. And we don't have a board seat, so we weren't there at the board conversations. But they, I typically in the really strategic deals, the ones that come from people like ICE, they're both on the M&A side and the investment side. They happen very much in a kind of a principal to principal relationship. So, the founder of one talks to the founder of the other, and they hammer out details pretty quickly among the two of them. And then they go tell the team to transact, right? And they say, okay, well, listen, wouldn't it be interesting if these are the things we did together? Don't you think this could transform your company? Don't you think this would be well received by the market? You saw ICE's stock price, it traded up on the day. It was up 2% after the announcement, right? And they said those types of deals happen almost more informally than a lot of the deals that happen with financial sponsors and that are maybe even smaller, because they're the visionaries in the room who decide to do them together. And then they go and they tell everybody else to figure out a way to make the math work.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, we've all seen the deal with Elon tweeting with Larry Ellison. It's like, hey, I think you should put a couple $1 billion in buying Twitter. And it's like, how much? And it's like, I don't know, at least one. It's always like some of the larger deals just come together far easier. And especially if it's not like a sponsor-led process. So yeah.
When Shane's been teasing a token, right? He tweeted out BTC, ETH, BNB, Sol, Poly. Do you guys have any thoughts on if this comes? I mean, it seems pretty obvious that it's coming, but any thoughts on when it comes?
I think it makes sense. The question is, what is it actually? The skeptic in the room might say, what does the token do that you're not already accomplishing today in the platform?
Yeah. I think that,
is it going to be a distraction?
And the other reason maybe not to do it would be, does this prohibit an IPO? Right. I don't think so. My guess is that Polymarket will be one of the early companies to both IPO and have a token.
Or be acquired.
Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, by ICE.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, there's clearly no reason for someone like ICE to do this deal unless they weren't considering future M&A, right? Mm-hmm. Like every time you see a deal like this, that is the consideration, right? It doesn't mean it will happen, but
you want to stay close.
That was my first thought. Actually, it's like they're going to buy within 16 months or so, or 2 years.
Yeah. How big of a dagger is this for Kalshi?
I will say one thing on the record. I've never forgotten that Kalshi threw shade. When Shane, you never want to kick someone when they're down. And that just has etched an impression on me that I would never use Kalshi for that reason. And obviously I'm biased, but
what are you talking about here? Are you talking about the Antonio Brown tweets?
Dude, they hired a bunch of people to throw shade on Polymarket when he was down, when the CFTC investigation happened. I think when the FDI raided his apartment. You just don't do that, dude. Focus on your lane, and if you want to win on a fair basis, not just, you never want to throw shade on a competitor. Just don't do that. And so I don't care how good of a product it is. I will never use a platform out of principle because of that. And I will never forget that.
I'm gonna say something here that I think I've said privately to people, but I probably never said publicly. But I'm gonna go for it on the podcast. I had a reporter bring up to me somewhat of a conspiracy theory, but when the raid happened. I guess, whatever that was, November of last year, it was broken basically while, the news was broken basically while it was happening by a reporter called Dan Peaq. He's kind of he's like a tech reporter, VC reporter, has absolutely, as I understand it, and I'm also regurgitating what I was told by this other reporter, he has absolutely no contacts at the FBI. He's never broken an FBI report deal before. He's never, broken any sort of DOJ type of story before. but he does happen to be close to a bunch of people in Silicon Valley. And there is a belief among a lot of the media community that the people either at Kalshi or close to Kalshi heard it was happening as part of the maybe as part of some of the investigation, and leaked it to Dan to put that out there, and that's why it got basically broken by a Silicon Valley tech reporter. And then, of course, we know for a fact that they went and hired a bunch of basically KOLs or people on Twitter to go and like tweet about it, right? And then we've seen, I think, what looks like a significant amount of astroturfing over the last few weeks, specifically ahead of this announcement, and it just sort of feels like there is just a habit of unethical behavior that for me talks a lot and says a lot about whether or not I would want to interact with that business.
Listen, man, you want to preserve your reputation. Like, you want to win fair, win because your product's better, and don't discredit a competitor. Like, just win because you're better.
Yeah, I asked. We have a episode actually with the Kalshi founder coming out that I recorded with him, and I asked him some of this stuff. We recorded it in person. It'll either come out this coming week. I'm trying to there's a big acquisition that's getting announced on Monday or Tuesday, and I'm trying to have them have that announcement go live on Empire. So we'll see if that happens. So if that does happen, then Kalshi will go live the week after. But yeah, you guys should listen to that episode. The last thing, and then we can move on from Polymarket.
Can you give us like a little what he said to?
Yeah, what was the response to that?
I mean, the response is basically like competition. Competition drives us to be better, and we're friends. And I was like, I don't think you guys are friends. Don't seem too friendly. But there's more. Don't want to spoil all of it, guys. You gotta get people to listen to the podcast.
Tune in.
Fair enough.
The last thing that we can move on from Polymarket is, so Shane announced these rounds, and I was reading through it. It's like, I mean, it's a hell of a list. Like Ari Emanuel and Naval and Rick Rubin, Ron Conway, Travis Kalanick, and then Saquon Barkley. And I was like,
incredible investor.
I was like, Saquon, that's crazy. And I was like, okay. So I started Googling Saquon's investments. Listen to this track record. He's invested early in Ramp, Anduril, Polymarket, Cognition, Anthropic, and Neuralink. He's invested all of his endorsement money the last 4 years into Bitcoin, and he's an LP in Founders Fund, Multicoin, and Thrive. I think he might be the greatest investor of this generation right now.
Dude, ESPN 30, what is it, 30 for 30 or whatever, that episode? Like, most of the time they do it on athletes that go broke. But like, he's up there with like Shaquille O'Neal, I think also has made more money outside the court than he has in his entire like NBA career, just because he was so good at it.
A lot of these guys just take their endorsement money now. They don't, like Marshawn Lynch famously didn't spend a single dollar of any of his contracts.
Yeah, Marshawn Lynch. I guess Magic Johnson also has like a huge portfolio outside. Like, but yeah, I think he might be the greatest to ever do it.
Yeah. Across 30 plus networks and 180 endpoints, Blockdaemon Earnstack unites staking and DeFi into a single institutional toolkit for crypto rewards. With multi-layered security, full asset control, and 24/7 support, Blockdaemon Earnstack is built for scale and regulatory clarity. Non-custodial staking and seamless DeFi access, all in one stack. Direct access to DeFi with no intermediate smart contract or vaults. To book a demo, make sure to click the link in the show notes or head over to Blockdaemon Earnstack to find out more. Thanks to Blockdaemon for making today's episode possible. The machine economy is here. Devices are monetizing data for their users all over the world. Tokenized robots are generating revenue for token holders. The first machine economy free zone is live in the Emirates, and it's all happening on Peaq, the machine economy computer. Head to peaq.xyz, that's peaq.xyz, to find out how you can benefit from the age of automation, or click the link in the show notes to find out more. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply. I'd love to talk about this idea of the stablecoin duopoly coming to an end. There was actually pretty interesting news this week that kind of went under the radar, which is Jupiter is launching a new stablecoin on Solana in partnership with Athena, actually. So Jupiter, I think people don't fully understand just like how massive the Jupiter ecosystem has become. And Jupiter sits at a lot of the trading that happens and like money movement that happens on Solana. So they're actually launching Jupe USD, and they're doing it with Athena's infrastructure and backed by USD TB and USDE. And it reminded me of this Nick Carter piece. So I don't know if you guys, Robin Santi, did you guys read this piece? The stablecoin duopoly is ending.
No.
I skimmed it.
Yeah, it was a good piece by Nick. It basically just makes the point that like, look, in throughout history in crypto, we've had two stablecoins, Circle and Tether, and now you have both with Genius and all these other companies that allow you to launch stablecoins like M0 and Paxos and Agora. You have the ability for hundreds of people to have their own stablecoins, and it's like 2 years ago we were all talking about, does it make sense for everyone to have their own chain? Now we're talking about, does everyone does it make sense for everyone to have their own stablecoin? But yeah, I'd love to get your guys' take on just like, Rob, I know you spend a lot of time in stablecoins. Like, what do you think happens from here? Like, who, we really only have it is USDC and Tether, and their market shares are coming down a little bit, but like they're still obviously the dominant players. Who else becomes dominant here? Like, will we see a bank have one of the biggest stablecoins? Will we see a fintech? Will it be crypto native people? Like, what do you think about this?
I don't think it'll be crypto native. So I think I could rule that one out. Listen, there are two things that are happening here, which is that incentives are driving every company, every wallet, every fintech to want to have their own stablecoin, right? Either it's for branding reasons, it's definitely for economic reasons. It's because they want to control the way those economics are shared. There's just a very clear understanding that these companies, if they own the distribution already, they don't think that they should be sharing all of those economics or giving up all of those economics to, whoever the issuers, right? And they also think there are things that they can do around loyalty. There are things that they can do around, additional yield. There are things they can do around that create like stickiness in their product if they have their own stablecoin. That is the incentive. And so we are in what I think are the early days, actually, of people launching their own stablecoins. Now, the fact of the matter is that people don't really want to launch their own stablecoin in so much as that they have to go manage their own liquidity, and they have to build out their own APIs, and they have to build out the wallet infrastructure, et cetera. What they'd rather do, of course, is they'd rather go and use, one of these service providers who has built the API connectivity into all the ramps, who have built, direct mint redeem, et cetera. And so, that's why you're seeing people use, Bridge and Agora and Paxos and et cetera, right? And so, and Athena, of course. That's going to continue to happen. Now, will any of these single issued stablecoins for like a specific fintech or a specific financial services company be humongous? Unclear to me, right? Because they're, typically only really distributed at the point of contact in that, whatever that company is, right? And we've seen this with PayPal, for instance, right? We've had PYUSD, that's issued by Paxos, and they've done a little bit of work to distribute it through their own, application, right? But they haven't really pushed it as hard as they could have. And then they've done, work to incentivize adoption of it in DeFi, which was really just meant paying a lot of money to DeFi to people who are holding it, right? And it's grown. And it's grown to some level because of that. Will it grow to, 150 billion or 200 billion or 300 billion because of that? Unclear to me, especially at a time when, PYUSD is maybe the only big, fintech to have one out there at the moment. But now let's say that every fintech has one, right, in the future. And so I think we're just going to start seeing a lot of fragmentation, and there's still going to be, call it the big general purpose, stablecoins that are out there that are continuing to do well. But that said, I don't think, I think Circle is in a somewhat tenuous position because they're really focused on being the regulated stablecoin and for business to business transactions, et cetera. And it's very clear that, if JP Morgan were to tell all of their customers that they could do treasury management on a JP Morgan stablecoin and it was better for them, that those people who are using Circle now for that purpose, maybe wouldn't use USDC anymore. I think Tether is very focused on the global South, and they have brand recognition in the global South, where like people don't say I want a stablecoin, they say I want I want Tether specifically, but they're still very much distributed by like the centralized exchanges, right? And so the centralized exchanges were to say that, hey, we want more of the yield, that could be a problem for them. So there is still, I think, opportunities or like surface area for attack. But I think we're in for a multi month period, maybe a couple of year period of just like disaggregation of stablecoins.
There's always like a bundling and unbundling phases, but like the reality is, where does the brand and recognition at the end of it ends with one thing, which is the US dollar. And so people are not going to necessarily have an affiliation, is at least my hypothesis around, hey, I want Tether, USDT or USDE or PYUSD. It's like, I worry if you're in that game, stablecoin issuers, and it's challenging. I'd rather PayPal, my appreciation is they haven't really pushed it as much because, primarily last year, because it was difficult from a regulatory standpoint.
They're pushing it now. They're doing it now.
I was talking to one of the board members. They're definitely pushing it now. Yeah. PayPal actually, as a company, is deeply, I think, over. They've been. I mean, the stock has not behaved quite well, but it has distribution, has all these merchant relationships. They're in an interesting position to really accelerate that, and I think ultimately, I would, or maybe you're become. I guess like maybe Rob, you can help us dissect because you're investors in a couple of these, but like Athena taking an interesting approach to becoming like a white label kind of provider, so to speak, in partnership with Anchorage, right? The first Genius Act compliant stablecoin. And then you have stablecoin issuers like Agora. Like, how do you, not to spend too much time on this, but like difficult to say because you're an investor in all of these, but like where do you think, what's a more defensible business model? Athena's or PayPal's or Agora's? How do you kind of see the stablecoin matrix?
Do you want to be the platform that lets people issue the stablecoins, or do you want to be the stablecoin issuer yourself?
Or the distributor?
Or
can the distributor be the issuer? And then it just collapses one layer.
Well, I think that's a bit of a misnomer of a question, and maybe I see you smirking. But the reality is like being the infrastructure layer.
Like Santi, I'm invested in Athena and Agora.
but being the infrastructure layer is clearly I'm not. It was this Kalshi conversation that just happened. So no. But the being the infrastructure layer is potentially defensible depending on how much infrastructure that you're able to provide, right? So I think like Santi, your point is getting a little bit to like, if you are just the stablecoin issuer, is that a defensible piece of the value chain, right? Mm-hmm. And I think if you looked at how Circle has kind of changed their business over the last year, it's clear that they're telling you in the market that they don't think just being the stablecoin issuer is defensible, right? What they're telling you is that they think they need to be doing other things that make them into a payments company. That is where they get defensible. That is where they make their margin over time. I think that is probably right? If you look at Bridge, what has Bridge done? Bridge is now, they're the stablecoin issuer underneath a few of these things at this point. But they are also offering people, orchestration. They're also people virtual accounts. They're offering people the on-ramp off-ramp. They're offering people the card product, stablecoin product. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that would tell you in any one of those products they were the best offering, right? Maybe on part of the orchestration, their API, they have really good APIs, or at least on a relative basis, some other people. But most of what you hear in the market is that like there's a better credit card provider, there's a better stablecoin issuer, but there's maybe a better on-ramp off-ramp, but there's not somebody who does all of these things, right? And so they go and they offer this consolidated product in a way that is good for somebody who wants to build that type of business, and that's sticky because they now own so many parts of like your business and what you do and how you create value. And so I think that's where we're seeing everybody move to, right? Athena is a little bit of a different point because everything that like Athena is a company or a protocol that is focused on accruing value to their token. They're focused on accruing value to the protocol, and they're not focused on accruing like equity value in the same way. And what accrues value to a protocol is often different, I think, and we can all debate on what that looks like, than what a view is a value to the equity, or at least it can be the same, but there are other things that accrue value to the protocol. And that's just like, I mean, if you look at the price of tokens, what is the most correlated thing to the price of most tokens? It's TVL, right? And so increasing TVL is probably in and of itself good for Athena, and it accrues value to the token holders, it accrues value to the protocol, it accrues value to everybody else. And so they have a bit of a different incentive, I think, than these other people that we're talking to. Owning the distribution is also great, of course. Like, it is very hard to build a big distribution network. It is probably harder to build a distribution network, and then also harder to lose a distribution network than it is, and easier to build the infrastructure layer, but then maybe easier to lose. But there's reasons to build on both parts of the stack, especially if and especially in the direct to consumer side, where winning eyeballs is a knife fight, and it is hard, and it's very unclear on how you actually do that for a lot of new companies.
Yeah, I would say just most protocols, TVL has been, but also velocity of that TVL is probably important for certain protocols. Like it depends on, if Hyperliquid, for instance, it's velocity. I would say OI is important, but yeah.
Don't you think the winners are just wherever the customers are? Like Phantom launched their own stablecoin. It's like you're not going to have, like, right now you open Phantom and it's like USDC, USDE, USDT. It's just going to say dollars.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's hard to build trust. Like, are people gonna be nuanced enough or have a preference for which stablecoin? No, if it's regulated, if it's compliant, like if you have the trust that you have through your platform of choice, your neobank of choice, which is an evolving narrative now, crypto, shocker. But like Plasma, for instance, hey, like, people gonna care necessarily what type of provider in the hood? I don't know.
Did you see that Coinbase updated? You know how on Coinbase you get 4% for holding USDC? You see they took that away, unless you're a
all of it.
Yeah, they're bringing the non-member rate down to 0% APY. So if you are a Coinbase One member, like if you're a subscribe, how they have their SaaS platform. If you subscribe to the platform, if you're a Coinbase One member, I think it's $5 a month or $10 a month, you get 4% APY. But if you don't, you get 0% APY.
Makes sense, right? The multiple on recurring revenue is much higher.
Revenue, baby.
Dude,
isn't that what Robinhood does too? Like, isn't that Robinhood Gold, where like you have to pay for the monthly and then you get 4%?
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's where your boy Omar, who's a huge Robinhood bull, might come in.
But you are too, so I assumed you did.
No, I yeah. But here's I was on Real Vision earlier this week, and someone asked me, like, what is it about stablecoins that make it so interesting? And I think it's like, go back to simple, like, lack of financial literacy. I remember reading a stat, like, the amount of money that has sat in a checking account at JP Morgan, if you look at their earnings over the last 4 years, is staggering.
Yeah.
And you would think that people would be sophisticated enough to like sweep that into a money market account. And
$4 trillion right now is earning 0%.
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is like, the other part of, like, in crypto, we love yield and we're so mercenary about yield. But like, the average consumer doesn't necessarily think in those terms. I will say, like, in all my learnings in crypto, like MetaMask, I was really surprised when they were like making staggering amount of fees. And you're like sitting there, you're like, gosh, why are people paying a crazy amount to swap through this front end? And it's like, man, like, people will pay for convenience. I think that this does not go away. And so again, if you have the trust of the consumer, you can do a lot of things. Coinbase, how many times have analysts gotten it wrong where they're like, oh, it's going to zero, fees are going to zero, they're going to be eaten away? And it's like, well, Coinbase is kind of synonymous with crypto. So you have your assets there. It's fairly sticky retail base. Like, people are not necessarily like going on chain, to clip a higher yield. And so it's just a learning for me, because I think in crypto, we are super sensitive to these things. And then one click, you migrate from one protocol to the other and you're chasing, yield farming and all this crap. But it's like, that's not how your normal consumer really thinks. They really don't want to. Most people really don't ever want to think about money, or if they're really optimizing it in the best way.
Shout out to today's sponsor, Katana. Katana is a DeFi first chain built for deep liquidity and high yield. No empty emissions, just real yield and sequencer fees routed back to DeFi users. Incubated by Polygon Labs and GSR, Katana is launching with notable ecosystem of primitives, assets, and partners like Morpho, Chainlink, and more. Katana's 1 billion cat campaign is live. Bridge and deposit directly into vaults in one simple click and start earning immediately on your Ether, Bitcoin, USDC, and more. Follow the link in today's show notes to get started. This episode is brought to you by Geodnet, the world's largest decentralized RTK network delivering real-time, centimeter-accurate positioning around the globe. Powering technologies that enable precise navigation for drones, autonomous vehicles, first responders, farmers, and robotics, Geodnet shows that blockchain can be a truly transformative force. By delivering real-time centimeter-level accuracy, Geodnet enhances emergency response, boosts construction precision, and enables advanced navigation for drones and surveyors far beyond the limits of standard GPS. To find out more, click the link in the show notes or follow them on X. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk, terms, and conditions apply. Let's shift gears to the trenches a little bit, which is Binance and the BSC, the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem.
$1 billion, baby.
So I think this is something that happens in crypto a lot. Is like you might miss the first trade, but then it's like, what's the second order impact? And what happened here is we talked about Aster on the podcast. So Aster is kind of CZ's competitor and Binance's competitor to Hyperliquid. The second order impact of Aster ripping is that BNB has started ripping and the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem has started ripping too. So if you look at the 7-day on all these prices, basically everything's down between 5 to 15%. BNB is up 16%. I think, I don't want to get this too wrong, but I think BSC flipped Solana. Let's see. Yeah, BSC flipped Solana in terms of 24-hour DEX volume. So, and active addresses actually. So yeah, I don't know, BSC having a moment. It's funny how quiet the timeline is about it because it's, a lot of the users are in Asia, but I don't know if you guys pay attention to this at all or have any thoughts on it.
Yes. I mean,
Yeah.
the question is, Rob, how many projects are you seeing that are building on BNB? I mean, it's fairly quiet, but a lot of them have felt like have started by ex-BNB like Binance employees. But like, out of 100 projects you guys are reviewing on a monthly basis, is there a meaningful uptick on people wanting to deploy on BNB?
No. And I'm thinking through the portfolio right now. My guess is there's, of the 200 plus investments we've done, there's less than a handful who have built on BNB, right? I think, listen, Binance has done such an incredible job, right? Like, Binance and Tether are the two best businesses in all of crypto, right? They've just completely dominated their competitors in so many ways. BNB, obviously a big part of that for Binance. Obviously originally the BNB token was just an exchange token, and then they launched the chain itself, and they fostered a really kind of amazing ecosystem. That ecosystem, though, has not necessarily built the most valuable applications, right? The chain itself has become really valuable. The ecosystem has become very valuable. The exchange is extremely valuable, but we haven't yet seen the applications become extremely valuable and be able to, I guess, permeate or proliferate outside of the Binance ecosystem, right? Aster seemed to be kind of doing that and being one of the first ones. And I'm sure some people will tweet at me and say things that I missed. And I'm sorry that if I have, and you think I'm talking about your protocol, but it strikes me that everything that happens on BNB today is still downstream from the exchange itself, where, obviously what's happening in Ethereum or Solana is, more organic in nature, right? Which is why we don't see, I think, an uptick of engineers and protocol builders building there.
Yeah. I think this is all just one big trade, which is people realizing that CZ is coming back. It's very clear something has changed. CZ is coming back, and I think it's, He is back, but like he's not like publicly back. Like I would guess in 2026, probably early in 2026. Let's call it Q1, maybe Q2. Like CZ is publicly back at the helm of Binance. And I think like if you believe that, you also believe that CZ is one of the best operators in crypto. What's the best way to long that? You just kind of get long BNB. I think he'll take over Binance US again, right? Because they kind of spun off Binance US. It was a separate entity. I think that kind of gets reabsorbed into Binance, and Binance US probably becomes a real competitor in the US. And yeah, I think this is all just one big trade saying, oh, wow, CZ's back. All right.
All right. Well, one of the things, obviously, Solana hate has been percolating and on the rise. I think people are just a bit frustrated that Solana is no longer like front and center. Anything there that you guys are seeing? I mean, on the timeline, I have noticed just negative sentiment there. It's just sort of like number hasn't really gone up, even though it has rallied.
Yeah, well, Mert pivoted to Zcash. So
oh yeah, well, yes,
half of Solana pivoted to Zcash. I don't know. I actually don't think it's like hate for Solana. I just think it's Solana has their first real competition, had their first real competition several months ago with Hyperliquid. And I see Hyperliquid as being actually competitive to Solana. I don't see I kind of agree with Rob. Like no one, maybe I'm just biased, but like I don't really know many good builders building in the Binance Smart Chain ecosystem. And I think a lot of the money that's being moved around on Binance Smart Chain and on Aster is just kind of wash trading. I do think I know a lot of really good builders building on Hyperliquid right now, though.
Yeah,
and a lot of people. So I think this is kind of just a continuation of like, so yeah, people just being like, hey, Solana's got some real competition now. That's what it seems like to me. But to me, it's not Binance. It's actually Hyperliquid.
I don't know, like to the point around there being some negativity on the timeline. I think this goes back to like a lot of the conversations we've had around like the timeline itself seems entirely like people are happy or unhappy based on token prices. They're not unhappy or unhappy based on like what's happening in the ecosystem, who's building what, like anything else. They're unhappy or they're happy based on token prices. I was talking to a founder in Singapore last week who had just launched a token recently, and it was saying like, listen, like we built this protocol, this business that has like created a bunch of value, is worth billions of dollars today. We're trying to reinvent the way financial markets work, and yet like the token traded up and then traded down, and like my entire timeline is just people like swearing at me and telling me how terrible I am and like how awful everything I've done has ever been. Right. And it's like, all I'm literally trying to do is build a great product for them. And I think the incentive mechanism when one, like half of these people are anonymous, and two, like you have early stage, businesses that have these tokens that people speculate on with most of the time without doing a single, lick of diligence, is such that like people, and then people also get engagement when they're negative. Like there is always more negative engagement than there is positive engagement. So the incentive mechanism is just to be negative, right? Like everybody. And so I find that, I don't know, maybe I'm getting old. There's like the boomer in me, but like I find Twitter to be like such a hard place these days because it is just so many anonymous people like bitching over absolutely nothing about all the time. And like I try to curate my feed, and yet that is like still permeating so much of what I see. And it's because people just I don't know, they're like just glued to their screens on like what happens on a token price every 2 hours, every 3 hours, every 5 hours, right? Versus like thinking about like, what are we actually building here? What are we doing here? What are we inventing, right? So I've said this, I think I maybe beat a dead horse on a bunch of these podcasts, but I think Solana is going to do great, right? And I think Hyperliquid is going to do great, and BSC and Binance have done great. I think the market's doing great, and I think the timeline is like nothing more than like a way for me to, kind of kill brain cells and feel bad about the state of the world.
Vocal minority, it's a thing. Yeah, but like it's almost like the real conversations are not happening on crypto Twitter. It's at the board levels, and people out the NYSE like that. Those guys are looking at Polymarket in a more disconnected, dispassionate way and saying, "Gosh, there's like 16 million people visiting the site. Elections are coming. We can do markets on a capture retail audience and like pump on the streaming Robbie kind of betrayed us earlier today, but like, you know, maybe you can share some of your experience there. But it's like, I think crypto has always been, the merits of this technology have been entirely predicated on the token asset prices, whereas like the technology is like you can something like Bitcoin is entirely reliant on the price, right? Because it's a commodity, right? It's like it's a digital gold, so like it's like gold, right? If it goes up, then it lends more credibility, more social consensus as a digital store of value. But everything else, you know, price certainly should track and be a derivative of utility. But like there's real utility in stablecoins. There's real utility in like settling that in these blockchains and asset ledgers. Like crypto asset prices are incredibly like sensitive and so you have to kind of be dispassionate from the prices and saying, God, yeah, like it's this technology is real. People are going to adopt it. Every business is going to transition their flow to stablecoins because it just makes sense. Like, you know, it doesn't matter if Solana is going up or down. Like people are going to use it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. What do you guys think about privacy coins, about Zcash ripping?
Good
to see it, I guess. Rob, you guys were investors in Tornado. So
maybe I can give a little so I was in Dubai, and the talk of the town was Zcash. And
we were there. You remember that party we were at? Yeah.
It was like a Zcash party. It was like Zuko and you know, Naval is just out like I basically feel like there's like a coordinated.
Naval got a airdropped, you know, a couple basis points to Zcash ZEC supply. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. But anyways, nicely done, Naval. On the
what was the catalyst? Like, you know, Zcash basically went for anyone that's been under a rock. You know, Zcash went for like $30 to like 150 plus, like in a matter of days.
It's up from 50 to 191. Yeah, it's up 300% in a month. I don't know. It does feel like privacy is like, I think privacy will start to have a narrative here. Like you got the Zcash re-rating. You've got Canton. Canton goes live. By the way, I don't know if you guys have been following Canton, and I don't know if Rob, if you guys are investors, or Santi, if you have a take here.
But not.
Yeah, in the OTC markets, the Canton token is, I think their TG is soon, but the token has gone from like 5 cents to 18 or 19 cents in the OTC markets in like a month. So, and then they've got their TGE soon. So
I believe there's a single market maker on those OTC transactions.
Damn right. I mean, there's only like one place to get it right now.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, is it a super efficient market? I don't know, but numbers going up. Fair. Point taken.
I'm just going to start flashing token like prices to you, and then you tell me if that's the
point taken. I get it. I'm just trying to build a narrative out of this thing.
Yeah.
Out of privacy. Yeah.
Out of it. All right, guys. Like Polymarket's been like did that right in terms of valuation, but like it's been cooking for years, like 2021, 2022, and all of a sudden it's sort of all the rage. What is the next breakout consumer app? Like what's the next Polymarket? Or what is the next company that you are seeing and saying, yeah, this company's going to crush because the founder's great, or you know, it's not still in the narrative, but you think over the next like 6-12 months is going to be like, yeah, like I told you so kind of thing.
I don't know what it is, but I know where to look, which is I'm looking at like a good weekend activity for someone listening to this, and honestly, I should do this. I'm just a little busy right now, but would be going to a Lions DAO's portfolio or six man. I think Dudas has done a great job too. Going to the 6-man portfolio or to the Alliance portfolio and just playing with all those apps. And the good thing about crypto is that so many apps are still so bad that there's a few that end up being really good. Like I saw Dudas tweeting about like football.fun, right? And apparently it's a great game. I don't know, but like you spend 30 seconds with a game, you can usually tell if it's good or not.
Yeah.
What do you think? Do you have an answer?
Me?
Yeah.
Inversion.
Okay. Well.
I mean, you asked about like a consumer.
I was gonna ask Rob about Monad, but Monad obviously cards.
Monad's not a consumer app though.
No, maybe something in the Monad ecosystem.
Oh.
Because you guys were investors. I'm an investor too, but I'm just curious. Like, you know, that's coming. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I'm Monad. I'll preface this with just that, like, I don't really spend a lot of my time thinking about like direct to consumer unless there's like a financial aspect to it. So like, you know, DeFi or like something like a Polymarket. You I get asked a lot by my LPs, like, what have you done in consumer? And my answer is always Polymarket, right? Even though at its core, Polymarket is an exchange, right? But I think it is like an inherently social application. So when it comes to like other social applications, like, my answer to you would be something DeFi related, which I think is not what you're looking for. I think like on Monad, super excited for them to launch, long time coming. We've been back since the early days, just incredible team around that. I think it's trading at, what is it trading at today? 13 bill?
13 bill pre-market, perps.
Yeah, in the pre-market. Listen, I think in Monad, if you talk to the team there's a lot that they're trying to build in that ecosystem. And there is, Fantasy Top is a portfolio company of ours, and they launched on the Monad testnet, and they're thinking about Monad, I think for mainnet. There are other things like that are launching there, but the main focus there has really been, financial markets. It's been payments. It's been, they acquired a thing called Portal and made this guy, Raj Peaq, the head of like stablecoins and payments there. He's like probably the single best stablecoin and payments guy at a blockchain. And he's very, very talented and worked at Visa before. I think they're focused on that a lot. They're focused on DeFi a lot. And in fact, I think the only other application that we are investors in is one called Purple, which should be, kind of the canonical perp DEX on Monad. And that's where we've been focused when we've looked at companies on Monad. And so I think that'll be the main focus, early on. And I think that they will do an incredible job at it. Like clearly the infrastructure is meant for better financial markets.
Good stuff.
What else is going on this week? S&P launched a crypto index.
Denari? Was that powered by Denari? Do you guys invest in that, Rob?
We're not investors. Big fan of Gabe. Obviously, he's been really successful in a bunch of different parts of his life. I think where what Gabe is doing is like a really slow burn, but he's going after a really humongous market, right? And I think we've talked to him a bunch of times, and every time I come away being like, man, I love his vision and where he's going, but we've always, I think, struggled with maybe the slow burn aspect of it all, which, maybe I'll look back in 5 years and be like, man, I'm an idiot, but that's why we haven't invested today. It doesn't mean we won't. And I continue to talk to Gabe all the time and we have a good relationship. But that's been a little bit of the back and forth there. But listen, the broader theme of tokenization, bringing equities on chain, needing to be in some sort of standard that allows for like Robinhood to talk to somebody else, but you don't necessarily need the DTCC, you don't need an actual clearinghouse. I buy into fully. I think the question for me is just like, who actually is that intermediary or who actually is that infrastructure provider? And I think that's very like unsure still.
Yeah. Cool.
To bring up the more boring stuff before we go to content of the week, anything going on the regulatory front? It's been fairly muted. I mean, government shutdown maybe has impacted that to some extent. Like two things that when I saw the government shutdown, like regulation and then also IPOs. Is there anything coming up in the horizon like Q4 that is important?
I mean, IPOs would be the BitGo IPO. Would be.
Yeah, but it's delayed, no? Like if there's government shutdown, that impacts like registration.
Yeah, government shutdown slows down the SEC. Though I think the SEC got categorized as essential workers. I think. I see. But I do think it slows things down. Yeah.
It's definitely slowing things down. We're seeing it across like a bunch of the people we're close with. I think parts of the SEC are open and essential workers, but not all parts of it. I don't know about listing specifically, so I'll defer to you.
We were told that the Senate Banking Committee is really trying to move the crypto market structure bill through, even if that means holding like a markup mid shutdown. Casey at our team had a good piece on this.
Yeah, it seems to be the I'm hearing that the last couple of days. I think I'm still somewhat dubious that it gets done, but hopeful. So.
Yeah, new spot crypto ETFs can't be approved, right, until the shutdown ends. Or I guess they can, but they just probably won't. It's probably not a high priority.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the ETF specifically. There are some, depending on the registration statement, there is, potential if the SEC doesn't respond at all, you actually automatically go live. And so there's a few things. I'm hearing this in the DApp market right now. There's a few of the DATs that are specifically saying like if they don't hear from the SEC by like the end of the month or November, they'll just probably take the point of view that they should be going effective. My guess is ETFs work the same, but somebody's going to listen to this and be like, "No, you're wrong," probably. But that's what I would expect.
Yeah. Content of the week, baby. Let's get into it. What do you got, Santi?
No. I'm never first.
No.
I don't, man. I've been reading. I don't know what I've been reading, man.
Do you see this? Like Santi wants to he wants to show me up afterwards. He wants to be last. He's like, gotta let Rob do it like fiction, and then I'm gonna come in with something like really highbrow.
Not really, man. Yeah, that's. I mean,
Did you guys see the $1 billion raise for base power? You guys see Michael Dell's kid?
Oh yeah. I saw that, dude. Good for him.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was reading. Rob, you appreciate this. I'm trying to level up as a leader. I'm reading Bill Walsh's "The Score Takes Care of Itself." It's pretty good, man. Some great stories about how
good book.
Huh?
Good book. I read it. Yeah, by the Niners and good. It's a good one.
Yeah,
I haven't read that one.
Yeah. What are you reading, Rob, or what are you watching?
This week I've been watching Task. So it's HBO show. It's kind of about.
When do you watch all these shows, Rob? Just like classic 9-to-5er.
You know me, like 5 o'clock. I'm completely off the clock. I'm just watching TV.
Yeah. Rob's a 9-to-5 guy. Not really.
I've been. I've actually I watched the episode last night at like 11. I mean, normally I sleep by 11, but I've had a little bit of insomnia since I got back from Singapore, and so I've been doing like the late night TV. But Task. It's like a HBO show. The creators of another HBO show called Mayor of Easttown, which was good. Set in Philly, I think, and it's basically like a biker gang that also happens to deal like fentanyl in the local area. They're like houses that they keep the fentanyl at, and that they and that they sell it out of, keep getting essentially like robbed by what they the FBI and like a task force thinks is like a maybe a rival biker gang. And it's got some good actors in it. It's got I'm blanking on his name right now, but
what's it called? Task Force?
It's called Task, TASK, because they puts together a task force. So like
Mark Ruffalo. Yeah. Someone else.
Mark Ruffalo,
someone told me about this week. They said it was good.
Yeah, it's got Mark Ruffalo. It's got Tom Pelphrey. Like it's a good show. It's like as far as those types of shows go.
I have such a lame answer to this. That was a way better answer than I have. I listened to an ungodly long podcast with Pavel Durov, the founder of Telegram, on Lex Friedman. This episode is 4 hours and 40 minutes long. I could have listened to a freaking audiobook. I'm in too deep. I got sunk cost fallacy. I'm four hours in, so I have to finish it.
Are you the kind of person that like has to finish it just for OCD reasons?
Well, I was wondering if they would talk about Ton blockchain. And I was like, wow, I'm 4 hours in and haven't mentioned it once. That's a signal that it's pretty bearish Ton. Like he hasn't mentioned it once in 4 hours. They just started talking about it. So now I've got to get through this portion.
Speaking of, I think I might have mentioned it. The Cheeky Pint. There's some good episodes there. I was listening to the Mark Andreessen one.
I listened to the Andreessen
He has I clipped it. It's an hour and a half pod, almost 2 hour pod. 1 hour 24. Go jump to the crypto section, and they talk about like Stripe's perspective, and then obviously A16C's perspective. Pretty fascinating stuff. Both I think it's Patrick that talks about their evolution,
and Charlie Songhurst too.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a really fascinating, and they make a really good kind of analogies in like the fiber kind of compared to the AI kind of infrastructure deployment, like comparisons to that.
They also talk about how crypto became like a philosophical thing, and how a lot of VCs were not willing to get past that, which is alpha.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's still true. Like I guess maybe out of the premier kind of like traditional VCs, there's like a lot which still haven't made a single crypto investment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally. So, all right, folks, thanks for listening. We got either the Kalshi founder going live on Monday, or there will be a big acquisition announcement and trying to get them to come on the show, and that'll go live a day late on Tuesday morning to time up with the acquisition announcement. So either one of those. Appreciate you guys listening. We will see you next week.
Awesome, guys.
Thanks, guys.